Hi, my name is Andy Van Zant. I'm a professional board game developer, and I'm taking a look at older board game titles through the lens of modern development. And it's important to keep in mind when I'm talking about these games that what I'm saying is not usually intended to be criticism, but rather to compare and contrast choices that were made in the past versus choices you might make for a more modern market. Today, we're going to take a look at Pack and Stack by Bernd Eisenstein, put out by Mayfair Games and Cosmos in 2008. Uh, so let's look at the packaging first. We've got full bleed art, which I like. Uh, we've got a little bit of excitement to what's going on, a little bit of tension here, and it conveys what's going on inside. So I actually really like the art on this. Um, and if we take a look at the bottom or the sides here, we can see that there's a lot of box wear, and that's from the linen texture. Uh, and I've mentioned this in the past that linen texture has some perceived value to it. So I like it on components that you're touching a whole lot, but I don't like it on other things because it shows wear much more readily. So I would not put linen texture on the box here. On the sides, we've got our basic information, which is good. We've got our title and our logos. I have no problems with the sides. The back has a good components in action shot, shows you what you're going to do and what's inside the box, and that's good. The text pushes the limits of what I think is a good amount of a good length of text, but it's still okay. I wish that this either wasn't here or was included because I think that things like this get lost 99% of the time. Otherwise, I think the back of the box does a good job. If we take a look inside, we've got a vacuum form insert, and this one is a little thicker than most, so it's a pretty good one in that respect, but it is not designed specifically for this game. And so usually if I were to shell out the additional money to have a vacuum form insert inside of a game, I would like it to match up to the game more specifically to be a particularly good storage solution for that, or at least to be designed for something with very similar components. So if it had deck slots in particular, you could use it for a lot of games that have decks of cards. And that's cool. This is a very generic one, and I'm not sure I would have done that. I think I would have gone with a either a very specific one or a plain white insert just designed to stop box rattle. If we take a look at the rules here, this is the rules sheet. It is a single sheet. The game is pretty straightforward. During the game, you'll take these tiles and everybody will get one face down in front of them, flip it over at the same time, and then you'll grab a tile from somebody else. And then you'll fill it with these wooden pieces that you got by rolling the corresponding colored dice. Um, and you'll get punished for having leftover pieces or for having leftover space in your truck. So that's the gist of the game, and so it's very easy to see that this is laid out totally fine. We've got our components and gameplay overview, and then in detail game end and some variants. Right, I have no problems with the rule book. It's got clear illustrations that touch on the hardest part of the game, which is the fact that you can have multiple levels in the trucks. Um, so in the components, we've got these truck tiles. They've got the number very clearly written on them, and the color also corresponds to the number, so it's easier to see that at a glance. And the space that you can put stuff in is very nicely delineated. There are two things that I don't like about these tiles. One is the linen texture. Two is that it's hard to tell exactly how many cubes, like say this is 1 cube worth of stuff, how many cubes can fit in a particular thing. And that is uh, specifically relevant for the 4 and 5 cube things. So that is a 5 cube tall block. This is a 4 cube tall block. And when you're trying to identify very quickly what can fit in something, it can be easy to miss the part that this would not fit here. So you could have some semi-transparent lines here delineating how many blocks each area was, and so those are the things I would change about these tokens. It is important that these are chipboard rather than cards because you are reaching across the table and grabbing them from other players. So they need some durability for that grab, and they also need that extra edge so that they're easier to pick up. Um, these blocks are fine. They're color coded. The colors are reasonable, especially since they are not don't have red and green. Um, I would probably have done slightly different. I think this this gray and this brown, and I think this can look similar to people depending on their uh, type of color blindness. It's not a big deal though, because the size is the thing that matters and not the color. As long as you have somebody there to make sure you know which dice match up to which colors. The dice are actually custom dice. They have custom numbers of pips, so the bigger blocks are harder to get, uh, and that is totally fine. And these are the points tokens. I get rid of the linen texture, otherwise they're fine. They have a little illustration that's the same on all of them, and they're colored based on their value. Um, so that's the components. Like I said, I don't really have big problems with this. Might change the colors, not a big deal because the size is there. And the two things I change on those tokens. Uh, but the big thing I would change. So mechanically, like I said, or didn't say, like this game is a party game. It feels like a party game when you play it, especially. It does not come across as that, in particular because of Mayfair and Cosmos, not known for their party games, and this big box is a $40, $50 box, um, and uh, and that's really expensive for such a light social game. You're doing this quick grab thing, and then you're doing your own little puzzle thing in front of you, and then you repeat that and and it is a fun game, and it works for more players than the player range indicates, actually. So it says 3 to 6 players. I've played with 9 and 10 players using exactly the same components that come in the box. So it's a very light game. It's a party game ish, uh, and I think a lot of people would buy this and uh, not have their expectations met by what's inside. So that's an issue because people often think that if something didn't meet their expectations, that it is bad. It is not a bad game, but it often makes people think it's going to be some kind of Euro game. Uh, and so what I would do is actually a pretty big change. I talked about some of the small stuff there. I would actually, for the modern market, make this into a roll and write game. Uh, you would roll dice in the center that everybody would look at communally, and they would have. You would still do the same thing with these trucks here, that where everybody had one and flip it over and then grab one that's not yours. But I would make these dry erase and give people markers to mark on their things. The thing that it would cut out is that it's hard to show the multi-layered stacking. It's hard to have this two-tier truck be as clear that it has multiple levels on it, especially when you're drawing on it. You could do it with up to 2 tiers by saying do an outline for things that are on the bottom level and then fill in for things that are on the second level. Uh, but I think you could also play the game and still enjoy what's going on even without that. You miss out on some of the cool physical, visceral part of actually stacking blocks, but it makes the game much cheaper. So the reason the game costs so much is you've got all this wood and multiple sheets of punchboard, and you have to have this big box to house all this. So it kind of looks like there's empty space, but keep in mind that these were on big sheets of punchboard that were in here as well. So what's in here is commensurate with the price, but is not commensurate with the play experience. And I would want to bring that down and doing something more modern with that and a roll and write game of this would I think be a very good choice, um, especially since you get the vast majority of what's fun about the game is still there. Uh, and that's pretty much it. Like I said, just to recap, um, I would get rid of the linen texture on most of the stuff. I would maybe adjust the text on the back of the box. I would make how many spaces are in this more clearly delineated, and I would make it a roll and write game. So thanks for watching. I'll talk to you next time.